YouTube going here. All right. A couple times I've forgotten to start up YouTube in the morning. Anyways, good morning. Thank you for joining me. I'm sure some more people will trickle in as time goes on, and some people will join us on YouTube. I can't see when they come and go. I hope everybody is ready for another beautiful May day. This is the kind of weather that everybody dreams of when it's the middle of January and the sun hasn't risen until 8 in the morning. These are the kinds of days we all can't wait to get back to. So please go out there and take advantage and enjoy it. Let's see. Well, as you can see behind me, I just moved at the start of the month, and I'm still in the process of getting settled in, because that's always a bit of a process. This week I haven't prepared a what do you want to call it, a formal kind of walkthrough of any deals. I just want to spend a little bit of time talking to you a bit more about mindset. I recently started reading. I started reading a couple books, but one of them is on leadership and self-deception, and it's a book I'd never heard of. Well, that's the title of the book, Leadership and Self-Deception. It's a book I'd never heard of, but it's very, very interesting. I'm going to talk a little bit about it and just a little bit about mindset in general, and we'll look at some real estate deals. I've got one open in front of me here that looks interesting in Sudbury, and talk a little bit about what the market's been doing, because it's been interesting, the developments in the market over the last month or so. Let's put it that way. First, I want to talk a little bit about, I guess, action and faith. Faith is a word that someone like me would hesitate to use, certainly in a seminar like this. I think language is a very clunky tool that we use to communicate with each other, because words come with baggage, right? Each of us associates words with different things. The meaning that is conjured in my head when I say a word is not necessarily the meaning that is conjured in yours when you hear a word, right? And we see this problem. It's one of the core problems of our politics, because one of the political proclivities is to change and defile language, and one of the political proclivities is to be quite rigid and unchanging in their usage of language, really. Funny enough, we call these people liberals and conservatives, or lefties and righties, or whatever you want to call them. And you can see how they do battle around language, constantly changing and redefining what things mean, or at least some contingent of us do, right? And that, of course, makes it really, really hard to communicate, because even if you think you know what the term means, somebody has decided it means something else, and now your communication is sabotaged. And I think that is the goal, not an intentional goal, right? I don't think, I think generally speaking, with the events of the world and politics in specific, I think people tend to attribute a lot of meaning and purpose, where I think there's a lot of accident and coincidence. But that's just my opinion. So it's hard to say, but I think that, this is kind of a spontaneous thing that happens. It's not some grand design or anything like that. But people tend to pervert words, right? And I just think that comes down to people aren't very accurate thinkers. Most people have never thought about what a word is. It's a tool, right? And how that tool functions. Most people have never considered that, right? And that really language is not effective unless the words convey meanings which both parties agree upon. Otherwise, you're not actually using it to communicate, right? So it's very important that we define our terms when we talk about things with other people, but also when we think about things, right? Napoleon Hill, the writer of Think and Grow Rich, the most successful, what do you want to call it, self-help or personal development book of all time, implored us all to practice accuracy of thought, by which he meant to use terms correctly and in a well-defined manner to systematically arrive at the truth, or as close to it as we could get. And he believed that through this process, you would make accurate judgments about the world, and the more accurate your judgments were, then the more accurately you could predict future events, which is not so much to say literally predicting the future, but in a much more narrow sense, right? If you have a 2x4, right, and you have measured it to be 10 feet long, right, and you need to cut it in half. Well, if you've measured it accurately, you will end up with 2 5-foot long 2x4s. If you have not measured it accurately, your result will vary wildly, right? And so being accurate in your measuring and your thinking results in you being accurate in your cutting, and therefore getting an expected or desired outcome, right? And you can see, it's a very simple, very basic analogy, but all the same, you can see how if you're measuring that 2x4 and you're careless and it's actually 11 feet long and you decide to cut it at the 5-foot mark, you're going to have 1 5-foot and 1 6-foot long length of 2x4. And if, for example, you need them to be equal length to support something, right, like a table, you've now screwed up and you're going to be wasting material, which is wasting money, which theoretically could be bad for your business if, let's say, you're a table maker, right? So this accuracy of thought is very pervasive, and it's very important that we use our language well. It's not to say that you have to be a language Nazi or anything like that, nor is it to say that language can't change, evolve, and morph. It does and has, right? And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that process, but it's about making sure you understand the tool that you're using, right? And what it's supposed to be accomplishing. And at least in the realm of politics and ideas, which is a realm you should probably try to stay out of. but anyways, in that realm, if you're going to use these tools, make sure you use them effectively, right? It's not good enough to say your words and your definitions to people who don't see things your way. They may not hear the same thing as what you mean when you say words. So you have to slow your conversation with people down and make sure that everybody's on the same page about what things mean. And more often than not, if you do that, you will find that even people who seem like they really, really strongly disagree with you at the face of it, will in time actually come to see things mostly your way once it is clear that you're both talking about the same thing and not at cross purposes, which is what we spend most of our time doing. Certainly in politics, that's what we spend all of our time doing. And so that's very wasteful. So faith, right? Faith is this concept that has become much more important to me in the last few years than previously. Now, when I say faith, I do not mean it in the religious sense of hallelujah and my Savior is coming and all that stuff. It's fantastic, I guess, if you have that kind of faith. I've got nothing against it. But that's not what I mean by the word faith. I mean faith in a more fundamental sense. Faith is defined as believing in something that that is worthy of belief, I guess. Basically something that there is evidence for, which is ironic, I know, because of the way that the word is often used. And I would argue that it is often used that way by the same group of people who will tell you that a man is a woman. That is to say that the meaning of the word faith has been perverted by people who don't want to look at the reality of what was being discussed by people when they talked about faith in the past. And you see that with all sorts of things, right? People don't want to deal with the realities of the way life used to be. They want to live in their fantasy about the way they think the world is today. They're usually wrong about both the way the world is today and the way the world used to be, because these people put their heads in the sand. And so, unfortunately, they'll pervert terms like faith to mean something that it doesn't mean. And a lot of times in our culture today, faith means the opposite of what faith meant to at least the Christian apologists of the medieval ages, and that would be blind faith, right? That is faith. And there's a reason why we have the term blind faith, because faith implies that you have evidence for your beliefs. Blind faith implies that you do not. And somehow we've kind of crossed those two meanings so that faith means blind faith when obviously it never did. And that's why we have that other term. So faith is kind of believing in the evidence and trusting in those things that you know, or in this case, maybe believe. Why am I talking about faith on an investing seminar? Recently, I agreed to invest in a business. We are going to be distributing and servicing luxury coffee barista machines. That's the business. And to get involved in the business, there's an upfront cost, of course, just like there is with buying real estate. And you have to make a decision as an investor or a business person as to whether or not you're going to do the business, whether you're going to spend the money, whether you're going to partner with people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And having just been through the process, or I'm actually in the middle of it right now, one of the things that stands out to me is the element or the component of faith. Now, again, I don't mean this in some religious sense. I mean faith. In this case, I mean faith in yourself, faith in the market. Those are the things I mean that you have faith in. Over the years, I've developed a track record with myself, right? Investing in real estate, investing in stocks, investing in cryptocurrency, investing in a bunch of things. And over the years, I've developed a track record with myself that I, A, am an investor, and B, I can do it successfully. C, it can be profitable, right? I've developed that track record with myself to the point where now I have faith that, if everything looks right to me, the numbers and everything, then there's a good probability I can make money. There's no guarantees. Those don't exist in life, but there's a good probability. And you have to have that faith on some level to pull the trigger, right? To actually jump in the deep end and say, yes, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be involved in this business. I am going to buy this property. I am going to invest in this apartment or condominium or at least just join the chat, or even I'm going to invest my time to become a real estate broker or realtor, right? Whatever it is. These are all things of faith. Now, there are other types of faith. I'm getting married soon. My fiance is a teacher, right? She had faith that if she'd get an education and do the right thing, she'd get a good job. It's a different kind of faith. It's a different kind of investment, but it is still the same thing, right? There are obviously people, we all know them, who would have gone to school. They did not have faith in the school system for one reason or another. They didn't believe either that they could succeed or that it would lead them somewhere. And they didn't end up going to university and graduating and becoming teachers or whatever, right? That's faith playing out in your life, right? And similarly, when we look at real estate, there are people, the vast majority of people, really, who don't have faith in their ability to manage a property and their ability to cope with the problems that come from investing in real estate, and in their ability to pick real estate that will win or produce money or income for them. That's a very unfortunate mindset that they have because, in my opinion, it doesn't require a very smart person to invest in real estate. It probably helps, I'm sure. And, I wouldn't suggest that my cousins with autism or Down syndrome or some of these conditions, of which I have both on different parts of the family, I wouldn't suggest they invest in real estate, obviously. But in general, I don't think it requires any great intellect. It requires some discipline, some dedication, the decision you're going to do it, and the faith to say that tomorrow will be better than today. And even not even necessarily to say tomorrow will be better than today, because you could even maybe be more narrow than that and just say tomorrow will be better than today here in this one particular community, right? Maybe not in the world, but here I believe that things will improve and what I'm buying will be valued by people in the future. It's as we cultivate this faith and I guess this vision of the future that we gain confidence to take action, right? And of course, it's all in the action. That's where you make the money, right? It's in buying the property, it's in renting out the property, it's in managing the property, it's in selling the property or flipping the property or refinancing the property. Those are all easy things to do once you've made the decision. The hard thing is the deciding, right? And the deciding is contingent on you having faith that it is going to work out for you, right? There are tools in real estate investing. I've shared some of them with you. I don't have my two computers right now, so screen sharing is going to be a little awkward. But can I show you? Well, forget it. Never mind. But you've got tools, right? I just shared with you guys, what was it, last month, the mortgage quick lookup, right? There's a tool. There's a tool for basically building up faith, right? The goal of the tool is to say, here's interest rates today. Can I afford to pay them on this property? And then to give you a what if for what if interest rates go to 2.5? What if they go to 3.5? What if they go 4.5? What would my payments be? And then so that you can kind of undergird that faith and say, hey, I'm going to be okay in the future, whether it plays out scenario A or it plays out scenario D, right? And the goal or the hope there is that you can now present yourself with enough evidence, right, to instill faith that this is a good move and you can move forward, right? It just seems to me like that's the most fundamental thing. And, I've seen some very successful business people make decisions in their businesses, right? And you have to keep in mind, right, these are areas of competency for these people, right? They have a business, they're very competent. That's how they're able to run this business. So they know their business well. All the same, a lot of their decisions are based on faith. I remember at one company, we were buying a machine. It was a $400,000 machine, CNC machine. I guess we'll call it $500,000 just to make things easy. We were buying this machine, and really, we didn't need the machine. The machine vendor had come to us, and they had a deal. It was the end of their year. They needed to get rid of this machine. Basically, the salesman's quota, he was trying to hit it, for the year, and the company was trying to get rid of their inventory so they could refresh for the new batch of machines. And so they wanted to get this machine off their floor, out of their inventory. And they came and they offered it to us $400,000, but it probably should have been a $600,000 machine, something like that, or maybe a $550,000 machine. So we were getting a good deal, but all the same, we didn't have business for this machine. There was no real reason to buy it, and the payments were going to be a lot. And you can imagine it's a couple $1,000s a month to buy something like that. They don't give you terms like they do on a mortgage, right? So it's much more expensive to finance equipment like that. And so you're looking at maybe a negative $5,000 or $6,000 a month negative cash flow as a result of this machine that we didn't really have business for. But we bought the machine anyways because, for lack of a better word, the owner had faith that his business was in a position that it was strong enough that he could withstand owning this machine for a while without it being productive, which was true. And B, that his business was strong enough that it could grow to require the capacity that machine would offer the business, which worked out to be true. But there was no way to know that going into the purchase, right? And so that's an example of faith, right? That's weird. Anyways, that's an example of faith, right? Directly impacting business decisions, right? And I mean, obviously a $400,000, $500,000 machine is not it's not the craziest business deal you've ever heard or anything, but it's just goes to show, right, that these things are about mindset. And I think there's this very kind of nerdy, kind of technocratic ideology that's been spread into the world that everything is about spreadsheets and the numbers. And I really want you to, if you believe that, and I'm a person who kind of fell into that trap myself. If you believe that, I want to shake you a little bit and assure you that is not what it is about. Those things are important for understanding what you're getting involved in and justifying your decisions. Absolutely. But at the end of the day, it's faith that's going to make you make the decisions, whether or not you believe in your ability to do it, whether or not you believe in the future, whether or not you believe in what you're pursuing, right? And that's what's going to ultimately be the difference maker in your life and your business, is whether or not you have that faith to take the action, right? Because that's really the thing, is everything is about getting to action, right? And if you've been attending this seminar for any length of time now, I mean, we have watched the market climb. Oh goodness. Since I started this seminar, I have watched the market climb probably 40%. I don't know if that's quite accurate, because I look at different markets. Certainly in some markets, I've watched it climb more than that, and in others, I've watched it climb less than that. If I look at a place like Sudbury, I mean, since I started this seminar, I've watched that market almost double. Almost, right? Now, we're in a period right now where they're talking about raising interest rates, and prices are not increasing like they were previously. Month over month, you're not seeing prices going up. In fact, in some markets and cases, you're seeing prices going down. Excuse me. So we're in a different environment than we were in maybe a year or two ago, right? So now there's a new question of faith, right? Is this environment really different than before? Is the world ever really different, right? And the answer to that question is super duper complicated and hard to say, because, the world can fundamentally change. And it's so hard to say if or when it does. But I mean, there was Russia, and then there was communist Russia. The world did fundamentally change, right? There was China, and then there was communist China. The world did fundamentally change. So things can change outside of the world of your investing and your individual behavior. But that's very rare and super hard to predict, right? So it certainly hasn't happened here as yet. I mean, whatever foolishness that our government happens to be up to, that sort of fundamental shift hasn't happened yet. So right now, while we watch prices slide, right now, that's a moment that I'm going to refer to it now as a test of faith. And it's a test of faith. It's not just a test of faith, but it's a test of faith. And here's why. As prices slide, some people are going to panic. That's what some people do. And as those people panic, they're going to decide that they need to sell. Of course, because they're panicked, they're going to decide that they need to, or at least can, get away with short selling, right? They're going to sell their property for less than what it is worth, right? Or sorry, I shouldn't say less than what it is worth, less than what they perceive it to be worth, right? Because they're going to go to the market and they're going to try and dump it. And if you want to dump something quickly, you usually have to take a discount on it, right? As these people go to dump their properties, all of these people are going to think the same way at the same time, pretty much. And so they're all going to end up dumping into the exact same market at the same time, which is going to cause a glut of properties, which potentially could tank the market, right? Now, what do we mean by tank the market? Doesn't really mean anything. It's funny that these terms are used. And tank the market implies that something bad is happening in the market, which isn't really what's happened. Those people will have flooded the market. Supply versus demand. There'll be lots of supply and little demand. Prices will fall. That's all that will happen, actually. It's a fantastic opportunity for you to jump in and buy some properties. But you have to have the faith to say, this moment of insanity, this moment of panic is temporary. And if I buy these properties, they will perform. They will do what my calculations suggest. They will perform the way my analysis says they will perform. Right? And if you have that faith, you can take action. We are creeping up slowly but surely on probably one of the largest opportunities to make money in any of our lifetimes. There is a crash on the horizon. Nobody knows where it is or when, but it seems pretty clear at this point that it is going to be big and bad. I don't mean that in a doom and gloom sense. I just mean, the higher you jump, the further you fall. That's all I'm saying, right? And our economy jumped quite high. spurred on by an incredibly irresponsible fiscal policy that has been pursued not just by our country, but by countries all over the world. I mean, truly engineered stupidity in terms of the policy, but here we are, right? And there is going to be a backlash or a response because there always is, right? Every action has a reaction. The government can't just pump billions or trillions of dollars into asset markets and have that be sustained. That won't be sustained. Something is going to have to give, right? And we're seeing it, right? The thing that's giving is the thing that always gives when you do that. It is prices, inflation, right? And we're seeing inflation. I just drove past the gas station yesterday. It was $2.02. I would just like to remind you all, because people's memories are short, I was paying 55 cents a liter to fill up my car the summer of 2020. Maybe not the summer, but like in the middle of the COVID panic, whenever that was. Maybe that was the spring of 2020. 55 cents per liter, fill my car. I'm now up to $2.02. Now, you say whatever you want, okay? That is not natural. That's inflation, right? And the government, they come out with these numbers. Oh, we're having 3%, 4%. They're complete BS. Those numbers are complete. Everybody knows that they're complete BS. It's obvious that the inflation is substantially worse than that. It's obvious to the people who are watching as investors looking at the asset classes, because you're seeing it in the property prices. But now you're seeing it in commodities like fuel, right? You're seeing it in the stock market. The stock market's getting record gains, right? It's not sustainable, right? Because eventually somebody's going to say, I don't want your dollars. They're Mickey Mouse money. Right, and as soon as we've hit that resistance point, you're gonna. I mean, things are gonna crash. Really, that's what's going to happen. And especially if you want to fight inflation, then you're gonna have to raise interest. Right, you're gonna have to raise interest to reduce the lending and lower liquidity in the markets. And as soon as you do that, it's gonna be like a game of musical chairs, right, where people start to wake up to what's really been happening with their money, and they're going to want an alternative. It makes the cryptocurrency space really interesting to watch. The people who are heavily invested in that space, right? The Bitcoin maximalists and that sort of thing are sitting there, and basically they're saying, and have been saying, hey guys, this is an alternative to the government's funny money. And you'll see that the money's funny if you don't believe us. And when you're ready, you come get some Bitcoin or whatever it is, right? And, I don't know, what year are we in here? 2022. Yeah, so 5 or 6 years ago when I, started taking cryptocurrency seriously, nobody mainstream was interested. It hadn't made it to the mainstream yet. Today I get emails. I'm on Robert Kiyosaki, right? Rich Dad Poor Dad. I'm on his email list, right? And if you're not, then probably don't sign up for it. It's mostly spam and crap, I gotta say. But he does email, right, all the time, talk about his investments and trying to sell you stuff. And you know what Robert Kiyosaki started talking about a year ago? Bitcoin. He started talking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency about a year ago, right? And it's not just him. I mean, there's several of these investor guru guys, whatever, thought about cryptocurrency now, right? So it's moving into the mainstream. People are becoming aware of it, and they're becoming aware of the problem that we have with inflation, right? And that is a question of faith, right? I was talking about faith before. Our money is called fiat currency. Fiat means by decree. That's literally what it means. The money is based on faith. The money in our society is based purely on faith. It's based on nothing else. It's funny, when I talk to people, and this is totally on the side, it's really nothing to do with investing, but you talk to people, I think atheism is very, very popular, very fashionable today. which is cool, fine by me. I'm not a very faithful person, so I got no problems with you not believing. But I think it's very fashionable today. And I've spoken to some people who they'll tell me they're atheists, and they'll say, oh, faith is stupid and believing in things is dumb. And they don't mean faith in the sense I was talking about it. They mean it in the sense I said how the definition's been perverted, right? That blind faith really is what they're talking about. And they'll talk about how, usually they're talking about Christians because usually they're lapsed Christians of some sort or another. Oh, Christianity's so dumb and blah, blah, blah. How do you believe in a burning bush and a man turning water and wine and blah, blah, whatever. It's like, okay, sure, fair, whatever. You have your criticism. I'm not a Christian, so I'm not about to defend the religion. I think it's got its merits, but, I'm not an adherent, so I can't really step up and defend it. But what I find really curious about that mentality or that attitude is like these same people have completely blind faith in their money, right? Like I find it really amusing actually that you'll have somebody come to me and talk to me about how, oh, well, I don't believe Jesus turned water into wine or whatever. It's like, okay, sure. Don't think that's affecting our lives one way or the other, but sure. Yeah, probably. I mean, you sound right. It doesn't sound right that he could do that, but okay. And they're so adamant and almost militant about believing that. And then you'd be like, so like our money's totally funny money. And they'll be like, you're a conspiracy theorist. What are you going to tell me about the Federal Reserve? And it's like, oh, I wasn't going to mention the Federal Reserve, but yes, that is one of the institutions that helps to prop up this system of completely fraudulent money. And there's a long history of fraudulent money that goes back since basically the beginning of time. It's been a problem for our societies. I think I've spoken to you guys before, but on the off chance I haven't, do I have a quarter here? I don't, but I've got a dime. Here's a dime. And I don't know if you can see, there's the edge of the dime, and you can see the little ridges. If anybody can see, there's the ridges on the dime. Quarters have the same thing. Most coins do nowadays. I don't know what that ridging is called. Knurling, I guess what you'd call it in machining. But that knurl on the edge of the coin was invented by Isaac Newton. The same guy who invented calculus, Sir Isaac Newton, I guess. Isaac Newton is the one who invented that. He was commissioned by the Treasury of England to come up with a way to prevent coin clipping. Coin clipping being the process of taking coins that are made of precious metal and just snipping a teeny little bit off of the edge, collecting it in a bucket. If you could do that to 1,000 coins, you could mint 10 coins of your own, basically for free, right? So it's a way to steal, basically, coin clipping. He was the one who came up with this method to make the coins in such a way that it would not be possible to clip the coins without other people realizing you'd clip them, and therefore they'd be able to reject the coins that were essentially counterfeited, right? That was 500 years ago. And what people don't understand is that he was trying to prevent coin clipping in the same sense that we try to prevent money counterfeiting, right? But the reality is that the government has a printing press and they counterfeit money all day long, every day, right? And counterfeit. What does it mean for something to be counterfeit? I mean, literally what it means for it to be counterfeit is that it was issued by somebody other than the people who are allowed to issue it. That's all it really means, right? Is why the philosophical of why the government gets to mint money and nobody else does is it's a lot. So we won't get into it. But basically, that's a question. And you have the people, what we call them, the gold bugs, who insist that we should be using gold and silver as money. And they're not wrong, at least in their argument as to why it's better than fiat. I think they are wrong about some of the practicalities of it. I think they introduce the exact same risks by using gold or silver that we have using the paper money. You just put them in a different place, right? Whoever has custodianship of that gold and silver is now in a position to play fast and loose with it and counterfeit it. Whereas right now you have the Federal Reserve or the Bank of Canada who's able to do that. So switching to one of those standards probably doesn't solve that problem, although it alleviates it because you can go to that custodian and withdraw your gold or silver. And if enough people do that and that custodian's insolvent, then they lose their power to manipulate the market further. So that would be a freer market in money, which is good. We don't have a free market in money, right? We have communist command and control economy where money is printed on demand by the government at the government's request when the government wants to. And that is something that was a huge loss for capitalism and for freedom, a loss that happened 100 and something years ago, and just everybody just kind of shrugged their shoulders and went, huh? And we're kind of seeing a lot of the consequences of that all these years later. You know, it's very interesting to read about the Weimar Republic. I don't know if you know what the Weimar Republic is. It was Germany after World War I, before World War II. So before the rise of the Nazis, but after they lost World War I, there was the German Weimar Republic. And basically, as a result of the Treaty of Versailles and the war debts that the West imposed on to Germany, the Weimar Republic had to pay back many, many, many times more money than it actually produced in its GDP. And it was unfeasible. It was never going to be able to do it. So what they did was they did what every smart government does when they've made a promise that they can't keep, just they broke their promise. But they break their promise in a way that is legal, right? That's what governments do. So they broke their promise by printing money until they could repay the debt. So basically they printed money until the Weimar was freaking worthless. But they used that to pay back England and France and everybody else with worthless money. So England and France and etc. didn't really get what they'd agreed to, right? Which is right. And Germany suffered immensely because printing that much money meant hyperinflation. I mean, literally was it the Reichsmark? I don't remember the name of their currency at the time, but it got to the point where people were using wheelbarrows full of this stuff to buy bread. Right? Like they got up to the point where like bread was priced in millions of dollars, like Zimbabwe, maybe 20 years ago or whatever. So very, very, very bad situation. And you know, as people have observed that when the money goes funny, so do the people. And so in the Weimar Republic, loose sexual morals began to emerge, including but not limited to a lot of what we would today identify as transgenderism. I think they called them transvestites back then. A lot of transgenderism, a lot of an explosion of a sort of gay subculture, and kind of the collapse of a lot of family structure in Germany. And that, of course, it was very bad for Germany. I'm not saying that any of those sexual proclivities are themselves bad, but as a package deal, the way that it happened in Germany, that was very negative for their society. And we obviously know what the outcome was the German people were looking for somebody who was going to right the ship, for lack of a better way to put it. And they put their faith in a gentleman by the name of Adolf Hitler. And really, they made the right choice in a lot of ways, in that Adolf Hitler didn't put up with a lot of the BS and crap that kind of characterized the Weimar Republic. And he was the backlash against a lot of these things, which is, of course, how the bad stuff of, World War II in general, because it was all bad stuff, but how that all kind of came to be was his authoritarian style and the belief that he could root the corruption out of their society. And, you know, people ended up having a lot of faith in his ability to do that, primarily because he was successful. You know, one of the dangerous things in politics is not people like Justin Trudeau. He is dangerous, certainly. And charismatic people can do a lot of damage. It's why Barack Obama was probably not actually a very good president for the United States. He was super charismatic, which meant he got away with a lot of stuff and people really liked him. But it also meant that he got away with a lot of stuff that maybe a less charismatic leader would not have been able to get away with, that have maybe resulted in more polarization than it should have, right? And that's true of Justin Trudeau too, right? There's a very charismatic guy. People really like him, whatever you have to say about his policies. And that can be a bad thing. But Adolf Hitler, he came in and he said, well, we're going to crack down on this immorality and we're going to root it out. And they did. I mean, at first people didn't know it was by rounding up those gay people and putting them in work camps, but you know, well, regardless, what he did worked, and it made Germany better. There used to be a saying, it wasn't a German saying, it was a saying here in the West, in Canada and the United States, about Hitler made the trains run on time, because, so the story goes, the trains didn't run on time prior to Hitler coming to power. It's a bit of an exaggeration. He didn't make the trains run on time, but he made them run a hell of a lot better than they used to, right? And it's a very dangerous thing, these political figures who are effective, because politics is not the right tool for affecting change. We need to individually do that, right? That's why you're here, to individually grow as an investor. And as an investor, you might build your little individual empire, right? And sure, it might only be a couple of properties, but hopefully you take care of those properties, and you take care of the people who live in those properties, and those properties in turn take care of you. And it's a virtuous circle, right? Where you're giving in the sense of your hard work, your effort to save up resources to purchase these properties, and then to maintain those properties. And then in exchange, you're trading now those properties that you own to people on a short-term basis to provide them with a home, hopefully a nice one, hopefully a safe one, hopefully a clean one, where they can hopefully thrive or prosper and grow. Maybe they can work hard and they can save just like you did, so that one day they can buy their first property, and maybe their second and their third, you know, and et cetera, et cetera. I'm currently, you can see here, this is a new space for me. This is a rental. I don't own this place. It belongs to a real estate investor, and he's renting it to me, right? And so I don't have to incur the cost of a down payment, and I can continue to deploy my money in, you know, I mentioned the new business, so I got to spend money there. And, you know, I'm hoping to maybe buy some more real estate. That's always on my mind. So, you know, purchase some more properties. And rather than having to take that capital and plant it, you know, I mean, I looked at buying a house in Mississauga. It's going to cost me, you know, $150,000 to $350,000 down to purchase a property here. It's like, you know, for $350,000, could pretty much buy a house in Sudbury cash. Like, yeah, true, it'd be a single family or maybe a duplex, but for cash, right? With that kind of money down. And then if I think about that as a down payment, I can buy multiple multi-family homes for that kind of money, right? So by having somebody in my life, and obviously this is just a person, right? I don't know them personally. We're just doing business, right? Who's willing to lend me this space, rent me this space, right? I'm able to leverage my resources and build a better future for myself, right? And so there's this narrative, obviously, that capitalism is this awful thing. It's such a disgusting perversion. It's capitalism is probably the greatest force for good humanity has ever had. What capitalism means in its true sense is voluntary exchange, nothing more and nothing less, right? And this man bought this home, and he will voluntarily lend it to me, and I will voluntarily rent it from him, and he will gain an income because of this voluntary transaction, and that income makes him wealthier, and it makes me wealthier. We're both happy with the arrangement. Granted, yes, a lot of people who rent don't have my mentality, and they won't necessarily be getting ahead financially off of their rental, but all the same, even if their priority is taking that money, the same money I'm talking about that could be used for a down payment, even if their priority is to use that to buy, you know, fancy luxury cars and to drink nice wine and whatever it is you want to waste your money on, okay, sure, but they get to do those things, right? And those are the things that are priorities to them and in their lives. So it's a win. It's a win for all parties, right? And we unfortunately have we just have this kind of abundance of inaccurate thought that has led people to these conclusions about things that they've never really thought very hard about, and they don't really understand, but it sounds good. And it's very dangerous. And again, like, we're seeing it, right? Because it sounded good 2 years ago. Oh, you know what? We got to quarantine because we got this disease coming and blah, blah, blah. And like, we won't even get into the merits of any of those arguments other than, yeah, this sounds like a good idea, right? Oh, well, you got to pay people. I mean, if they're not going to go work, we're going to have to pay them, right? It's like, okay. I guess that's true. Okay, well, how are we going to pay them? Oh, we'll print money. We'll print money. That's how we'll pay them. This is a good idea. Fast forward 2 years, our gas now costs $2. Now, let me ask you a question, right? The argument is ostensibly, I'm going to print money, $500 a week or whatever, not to help Aaron, right, the real estate investor who doesn't need help, right? I don't need help. I didn't even take CERB. So I didn't need the help and I didn't want it. I didn't take it. Not to help me, although it was offered to me just like everybody else. I'm not complaining or anything. But ostensibly to help those poorest, weakest members of our society, the people who really can't help themselves. Okay, sure. Whoever those people are. First of all, I don't believe that people can't help themselves. I know people who are, like retarded, literally. I have family members who literally are not cognitively functional at the level of normal people. And I still believe that they'd be able to help themselves if the government would get out of their way. And I literally know circumstances where the government stopped them from getting a paycheck. So yeah, I don't believe that people can't help themselves, but sure, fine. For those people who are the weakest and the hardest hit, we're going to give them $500 a week. Okay, cool. Now we fast forward 2 years and gas is $2 a liter. I'm not going to go to the low because that was artificial, but from about $1.20 at the most, right? That's what we were averaging a year and a half, 2 years ago, 3 years ago before COVID, right? Energy prices affect everything. That gas goes into the cost of every good you buy on Amazon, everything you buy in the grocery store, everything you buy at Best Buy, everything you buy everywhere, right? Gas goes into everything. Even when you don't buy stuff just to get from place to place, the cost of gas affects how often you can see your family. Because now how much does it cost to travel to go see them, whether it's driving to the next city over or whether it's flying to somewhere far away, right? Those fuel prices affect everything. Now you tell me, if I'm a poor person, was I better off in a world where you didn't give me $500 a week and forced me to stop working, but gas prices stayed low? Or am I better off now in a world where gas prices are $2 plus, right? And we all know what the answer to that question is, right? People are not being thoughtful. They're not practicing accuracy of thought. And therefore, we're arriving at these problems, these self-inflicted wounds, really. And of course, the people doing the harm, right? Somebody like Justin Trudeau, literally a person of privilege who has never in his life struggled, right? Who's never in his life known hardship, right? Sits there and says, oh, I'm going to help you. I'm going to protect you from the hardship and the difficulty, something he literally knows nothing about, right? And what's he end up doing? He ends up hurting people. And I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, it's not a conspiracy. He didn't mean to do it. No, I genuinely believe he's just so stupid that he did this without thinking about what the consequences would be, right? And so here we are. And I think it's very important. Obviously, that's kind of a political bent, and that's kind of an aside. But I think it's very important that we practice this accuracy of thinking, right? Not so much for the political, although it would be nice if we lived in a world where people voted in a way that wasn't self-destructive. That would be nice. But so that you can use that principle in your own life to better yourself, so that you aren't dependent upon the government and their $500 checks, and so that they aren't tempting to you. One of the problems that we have is the majority of people in our culture and our society have been demoralized. And it's totally understandable why. We've been running a great campaign about how awful, Canada, America, the West, whatever you want to call it is, right? How this society is racist, it's evil, it's sexist, it's blah, 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 blah. And they're lies. They're all lies, right? And they're all the same lie. This is the thing you got to pay close attention. It's all the same lie. The lie is that you can't get ahead in your life. Maybe it's because of the color of your skin. Maybe it's because of the shape of your genitals. Maybe it's because of where in the world you were born. And you know what the truth of life is that it doesn't matter where you come from. You finish on top if you work real hard. In real estate investing, one of the people who attends here, Dylan, I'm going to give Dylan a shout out. He's not here today, but one of the people who attends here, he's bought since coming to these seminars, because he only started investing after he started coming to these seminars. He's now bought 3 properties. And I was talking to him about it, how's it feel, right? And he said, oh, it feels pretty good. I need to go out and I need to buy more. And I said to him, I just want to share a statistic with you because I want you to understand something about what you've accomplished in these last 2 years. In Canada, okay, a top 5% real estate investor owns 2 or more properties. 2 or more. So I explained to him that in these last 2 years, just through massive action and faith, you have become the top 5% of Canadian real estate investors. Can you believe that? It's hard to believe, isn't it? The top 1%, I think it's 5+ properties. It's not that much. Now, I'm telling you this because people have this image in their head that, what am I trying to say? That the success is this unreachable, unattainable thing. And what I hope you'll take away from this is that actually to be in the top 1% of anything, income or anything else, is really just a matter of effort. Now, if you want to be in that top 0.01% or whatever, then that's a lot more than just that. There's probably luck involved and a lot of effort, but like a lot of effort. But to make it into that top 1% and like in almost anything, just effort. It's just effort. You will fail, so you're gonna have to pick yourself up. That's a type of effort too. But it's just effort. And the message is that effort doesn't matter, right? Effort is irrelevant because you're black or because you're a woman or because you're this, because you're gay, because you're that. And I don't know. I'm certainly not a white dude, that's for sure. That's not how I identify. That's not how the world sees me. Hasn't stopped me from buying real estate. Hasn't stopped me from making a bunch of money. Right? It didn't stop me from investing in business recently. It's not an obstacle in your life, whatever your thing is. I mean, maybe if you're mentally handicapped, then that might be a legitimate barrier in your life. But my guess is that no one listening to this is, right? That's my guess. And so really you should have faith that you can accomplish and you can do. There's a fantastic book, a book I highly, highly recommend. It's called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill, and it was actually published posthumously. He died without releasing this book. Napoleon Hill was prolific. He wrote a lot of books, and a lot of them are kind of all echo the same theme. Right? If you've read Think and Grow Rich, you've read like half of his books. But Outwitting the Devil, which also definitely repeats a lot of stuff in Think and Grow Rich, but Outwitting the Devil is probably one of his best books. In that he really, I guess he personifies the things that make us fail as being the devil. And it's basically an interview of how and why these things sidetrack people. And it's just such an excellent book on exploring your own individual eccentricities and neuroses and kind of how you look at the world and how you allow the obstacles the world presents for you to interact with you and your goals and your vision. But a really, really excellent book, Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. I would highly, highly recommend. And then he talks about everything that I've talked about, and he goes into much better detail and depth. When you have 8 hours of book or however long it takes to read, you can be much more insightful than I'm being in this hour here. But that's where the focus needs to be. Now, I'm going to talk about real estate for about 5-10 minutes here, like the actual marketplace, and then I'll let you guys go. I'm looking right now at a property in Sudbury, Ontario, and I can't share the screen because it's on a different computer and I'm not set up. But this is a really weird property. And actually, I'm going to go back because I don't want to talk about this property specifically. I'm looking at properties in and around Sudbury, and I am noticing that the prices have started to kind of stabilize. We're seeing probably around $125 a unit and up. Obviously, depending on where. Oh wow, this thing's still for sale. What do you mean new listing? This is the same damn property as before. Yeah, this is the same exact property as before. Oh, but they lowered the price. Okay. we're seeing the listings. It looks like pricing is kind of stabilizing. Oh, it's beautiful property. That pricing is kind of stabilizing around that $125,000 to $150,000 per unit valuation. I'm looking here. Here's a 7-plex. This is the same one. This one's they've been trying to sell this for a year, and I totally understand why they can't sell it, because it's 7 units, so it's a commercial. Which makes it hard for people to buy, but it's in a residential neighborhood surrounded by other residential properties, so it's probably hard to comp. It's cobbled together, it's one of those like piecemeal houses. The listing is 223 Jean Street in Sudbury. It's listed at $679,900, 7 units, so less than $100,000 per unit. That'd be a good buy if you could qualify for the mortgage. Probably do pretty okay on that property at that valuation. The issue being, right, and this is the issue that they're having, is exiting that property is going to be hard because there's nobody to really sell it to. One strategy might be to buy that property, run it as is, for a time, and then your exit strategy might be to consolidate some of the units to turn into like a 5-plex. So that you could, so that you could potentially sell the property as a residential rather than as a commercial. That might be an exit strategy because it'll be valued higher, right? I'm looking here. If I just scroll up, I've got a 4-plex. Actually, no, here's a 4-plex, and it's around $400,000. That's around $100,000 per unit again. So we're seeing the prices are kind of stabilizing. It's probably the word I would use, or if not stabilizing, then kind of in some cases they're actually going down a little bit, right? So that to me indicates that the interest rates are having their effect. The Bank of Canada has, of course, raised interest rates 1% so far this year, and the talk is about doing another 1%. No, sorry, they haven't raised rates 1% this year. They raised rates 50 basis points and 25, maybe it's 0.75% this year, something like that. And there's talk about doing another 1% by the end of the year. So almost a 2% raise over the course of the year. If that happens, I imagine prices will continue to fall because obviously people's financing costs are going up, right? And these properties are largely being financed, so that makes a big difference to people. So that's not great, right? Certainly, if you want to be buying in this environment, then there's probably not going to be a lot of upside for you on the equity side of the equation, right? Your passive appreciation not necessarily going to be there. There may not be as great of an opportunity for active appreciation, although depending on where you're taking the property from and where you're taking it to, it might be fine in that regard, right? So your focus needs to be on cash flow, right? As I've said so many times, cash flow is what's going to allow you to keep your property afloat when prices go against you. In this case, Sudbury is still a very good market for that. That 7-plex would cash flow almost certainly. Again, buying it might be hard because banks are going to give you a hard time lending on it. They're going to want 25 down, right? That's the big catch with that property, is the bank is going to ask for 25% down, right? So in that case, that's $175,000 or so down payment that they're going to want on that property. And you could buy a property down the street from it that's a 5-plex for 10% down. So even if they were priced exactly the same, the out-of-pocket cost to you would be less than half on the 5-plex versus the 7. So, a savvy investor looks at that and they go, well, I can buy 10 units basically for the cost of 7. Why would I do that for the out-of-pocket cost of 7? Why would I do that? And this is where this listing, and again, I've seen it go on and off. I wish I could share my screen right now, but I've seen it go on and off for a year, maybe longer now, and they just aren't able to move it. It was previously priced at almost 800 when the market was really hot, but they've obviously reduced the price now. You don't have a very good market to sell it into. Commercial real estate in general does not move very well. It's a much slower market than residential for obvious reasons, right? There are fewer people looking to buy it. and those people tend to be much savvier, so it's hard to find a sucker to swindle. You have to give somebody a good favorable deal, and on that property, that's going to be tricky because your cash on cash return is going to be quite low. But still, you would get cash flow if the market were to tank on you. That property would still probably perform just fine. There's plenty of opportunity there, right? Certainly, if you have faith in the rental market, pardon me, if you have faith in the rental market, you'd probably do very, very well with that property. Yes, Armando.
Hey, sorry. So I just to recap there, because I know you can't share your screen.
Yeah.
You said that was a 7-plex. How many units?
7-plex. Yeah, 7 units.
It was a 7-plex.
Yeah.
And it was all like it's all normal. Like it's not a like a mixed use.
It is not a mixed use. It's all residential.
It's not mixed use. It's all residential.
Yeah.
And then it's listed at what? Sorry.
It's listed at $679,900.
$679,900.
Yeah. So that's just under $100K per unit.
There's work to be done to it.
I mean, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you know what? When you see the internal photos, like it's dated, but it's not that bad. It would definitely require some paint. There's probably some to get maximum rent out of it. You definitely want to revisit a lot of the probably kitchen spaces. I'm just looking at them right now. A lot of the kitchen spaces. You definitely want to paint the common areas. But I mean, the building looks like it's in pretty good shape. Definitely the people who live there are, of a lower socioeconomic status for sure.
Right.
Here's a room with some patches in the walls. So yeah, you definitely have to do some painting there.
Is it retrofitted or purpose built?
No, it's a retro.
It's retrofitted.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. It's
and they're all bachelors.
Let's see. Does it say they're all bachelors? I don't know. 7 units in total. Do you say what they are? No, they are not all bachelors. It's actually only 2 bachelors, 2 1-beds and 3 2-beds.
3 2-beds. That's good.
Yeah, it's not a bad property. Its problem is it's a 7-plex. That's its problem. And none of the lenders will treat it as a residential. So
it's been coming on and off the market, this one.
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, you've seen it. Like I'm sure you've seen this listing before.
Okay.
For sure. And it's been on and off for at least a year now, I would say, maybe longer. Yeah, they've been trying to get rid of it. Like it's the kind of thing you might be able to negotiate with them if you get in touch with them, and I would think at this point they'd probably be pretty open to a vendor take back, just because they've been trying to get rid of it so long.
What's the address? Sorry. Can you type it in this chat so I can just save it out there, because I'm just at work, so I want to make sure that.
Can I type it? I can. 223 Jones Street, Sudbury, Ontario. That's Peter 3 Charlie 2 Susan 2. I will send that to you right now. There you go. Yeah. Okay. There you go. Yeah, that's a property right there. Right. There's a lot of opportunity, right? And not just I've been looking to. I mean, I'm watching the market here in Mississauga because I would like to purchase a place rather than live in the unit that I'm in right now. And we're seeing the price opportunities there too. Yes, Elias.
Just a quick question for Mondo there. You brought up retrofitted versus purpose-built. What's the difference between the two, just definition-wise, if you don't mind elaborating?
Oh, no problem. Sorry, was that a question for Armando? You want him to answer, or should I?
Well, he brought it up, so whoever. It doesn't matter.
And I think you should take that one because I just got to do something.
Sure, yeah, no problem. So a retrofit means we had a property that was built for one purpose, and then retroactively, that's why I retrofit, we change it for a different purpose. So you go in, you do a renovation, you change the purpose of the property. So maybe it was a single family home and we retrofit it to be a 2 or 3 or 4 family house, right? A multifamily property. A purpose built, right, is something that was built from day one for that purpose. So a lot of times you'll see like a nice square, like sixplex or something like that, where it's like a tiny little apartment building. That's a purpose built, right? There was no need to retrofit it.
Okay. Thanks for that.
Yeah, no problem. Right. So that's that's a great opportunity there. I've been looking around Mississauga. I've seen prices here fall from the peak that I was seeing. And I mean, I'm looking at a fairly, I mean, everything in the market here is very expensive, but I'm not looking at like at the lower end of the market. I'm kind of looking at kind of the mid range. So I was looking at properties that were maybe, let's say, around 1.5 mil. And I'm probably seeing those same properties, or at least very similar, comparable properties, now probably at about 1.3, 1.35, 1.4, maybe at the higher end. So the interest rate increase is definitely having an impact on prices. And if you check monitoring services like House Sigma, you can see there's a bit of a negative delta on housing prices in the GTA right now, as kind of the market slows down and people are anticipating further rate hikes. So it's something where you definitely want to keep your eye on the market, right? And this is a really fantastic time where you can watch as interest rates go up and down. No, oh, sorry. Let's see Sean's question there. As you watch the prices go up and down and interest rates move, you can get a better sense of how those factors are moving together. Would they require being registered? Yes, technically. So in Sudbury, they have shoot, I forget the name of the program, but basically, yes, they register rental units. That is something that the municipality wants you to do. Now, require is a tricky word in the sense that that's what the city would like for you to do, for sure. And you definitely face some fines if they caught you out of compliance. That being said, there are lots of tenants who don't give a crap about you registering those units and who happily rent from you. They wouldn't care at all. So those units not being registered would not necessarily be an issue for you renting out the space. It's more of like a legal and liability issue. It would be very bad for you. I shouldn't say it'd be very bad for you because there's no actual like provincial statutes. So it would be unpleasant for you if something happened, like catastrophic, like there was a fire or something, and you had units that weren't registered but were tenanted and something happened to those people. I think the city would try to make your life really difficult. And certainly if those units were unregistered and they were also illegal, that could become a problem for you. But assuming that they're compliant legally, right? That is, there are means of egress and people can escape in the case of a fire, and you've kind of taken care of the safety side of things, and they're only unregistered, like people aren't going to care. If there are people here, certainly in Mississauga, I mean, I was looking at these apartments, right? There are people who are renting out completely illegal basement apartments here. And like, yes, we don't register units in Mississauga yet. I'm sure they're working on that. But like completely illegal apartments, people are renting them, people living in them. So it's kind of a tricky thing. Obviously, like good advice is, yeah, don't use unregistered units. Getting them registered requires that they be compliant with city bylaws. It's actually funny because I didn't read that detail in there, so I'm not sure where you got that, but I'm sure I'm not doubting it's there. I must have browsed through and skipped over it. Oh, it says it right at the top there. Funny, I see it now. But you can see there, right? It says right here, 5 registered units, 7 units in total, all currently occupied. Right? So they don't have them registered, but they've got them rented. Right? So For you, if you were to buy that property and you inherited those tenants, that's even better for you, because then you could argue their legacy and you weren't in a position to change the arrangement for them and da 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 da. So you could get away with it. It's probably one of the many things, and there are a few things about this property that are scaring investors away from it. The one is the commercial thing. This is probably another. Third is, quite frankly, that neighborhood is not necessarily the best. So your tenant quality is going to be lower than you'd like it to be. Which, I don't think any of those things are necessarily problems, but they're challenges, right? And you kind of have to pick your challenge, right? In this case, you're getting a good discount on the property that maybe you can, with a little bit of concerted effort, you can get quite a bit of cash flow out of. But these are the problems that you'd have to solve. You could, of course, buy a property with none of these problems, but it'd probably be more expensive and therefore have less cash flow, right? So these are the trade-offs, right? It's all about kind of picking your poison and what kind of investment you want. This is definitely a deal for somebody who's probably going to be a little bit more actively involved, right, than, say, maybe the passive turnkey deal that's in a nice neighborhood and is like a side-by-side duplex that's tenanted by professionals or whatever, right? And that's something to consider. Certainly property management, right? When you're going to buy something, especially something like this, you got to make sure you've got property management who's on board to manage it. Because it could be a situation where this building has a reputation, everybody knows that it's whatever, and your property managers might say they don't want anything to do with it. That's entirely possible. We bought a building with a drug dealer living in it. We didn't know that. We didn't know that going into the purchase, but we got in there and our property manager got in there and like the dude had just recently been stabbed in a robbery or whatever. And, that definitely, she was up for the challenge, but she didn't like it all the same. We kicked him out. We paid him good money to leave and he caused some problems, but nothing major. But, that's a challenge that you got to deal with, right? And certainly it cost money in that case, right? It cost time and money for us to get rid of him. And that was what the cost was, right? All problems can be solved. All problems can be solved. There's an article of faith. All problems can be solved with sufficient time and money. All of them. There's no challenges that can't be solved. You rebuild the damn house if you got enough time and money, right? So that's kind of the mindset you got to take into these deals, right? Is I understand there's going to be difficulties or challenges. Identify them as best I can, and then decide if I can live with those headaches. Life is about picking your headaches more than anything else, right? I'm going to use marriage as an example because I'm getting married. Lots of people complain about their partners. My wife is this, my wife is that, my husband is this, my husband is that, blah, blah, blah. But then you go find the people who aren't married and they complain about being single or dating or the women out here are whatever, or the men out here are this and that. It's all about picking your problem, right? You got to sit down. You got to decide one day, is this a problem that I want to have? This is a money thing. So with money, you have problems like, do I have enough money? I don't like my job. I don't like how I earn my money, et cetera, et cetera. The question becomes, hey, do I want to earn my money by working a 9 to 5, or do I want to earn my money by dealing with a bunch of crackheads at my property? Or crackheads might be strong, but dealing with maybe slightly less desirable people in a property that I own somewhere, right? And whatever worries and concerns that come with that. There's no getting away from. I think people have this dream that they're gonna invest or whatever. The dream for a lot of people is to win the lottery and that you're gonna get quote unquote stress-free money. And like, there is no such thing. Money causes stress, as Biggie told us. More money, more problems. I'm not sure that that's entirely true, but money comes with its own set of problems. They're just different problems. And, you can have a job that you hate and you can do that. And every day you can get up and say, I hate this job and blah, 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 and go to work and make your money that way. Or you can buy a property, maybe a property that you hate, maybe. And you get up every day and say, I hate this property, but it pays you, right? And the hope, obviously, with buying the property is that maybe you buy one or two that you hate, but you buy a whole bunch that you don't hate and that are pretty good to you, and you can get very wealthy that way. You can build in a way that for most jobs, for most people, you can't, right? And obviously, like, you can work real hard at your career and you can get ahead and you can get promotions and you get more responsibility and more pay and more blah, 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 and work your way up. And not every company is conducive to that. But, you know, if you're willing to work hard, and including constantly looking for new job opportunities in places where you can advance your career, you know, you could be a careerist and you can end up making plenty of money, right? But it's about pursuing that challenge, right? And it's a much less surefire challenge because the thing you're investing in is not yours. You don't have control over it. The great thing about real estate or any investment, including building your own business, doing stocks, doing cryptocurrency, doing any of that stuff, is that you own it. It's yours, right? And that other people are less able to affect your destiny than you are. Anyways, I'm going to stop here. I'm thank you, first of all, for joining me this morning. I always appreciate having an audience and getting the questions and having a bit of participation. It's very cool, always. I am hopefully almost settled in, so I'm going to try to get things set up again where I can get maybe a better camera going and audio and get the other computer hooked in so I can share my screen and show you guys some of these listings again and get back to doing some analyses online. I hope you all have a fantastic week, and hopefully you'll join me again next weekend. And until then, best of luck with everything you do, okay?
Thanks, Evan. Take care.
Yeah, you too, Armando. And